All right, let's get rolling. So it is June 24th. I'm going to call the meeting of the Milton School Building Committee to order at 7:09 p.m. As we typically do, just doing a roll call of how I see people on the checkerboard in front of me. John Cohane. Yep, you're on mute. You're good.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Carrie Hurley.
Here.
Scott Tereshek.
Present.
All right, Tim Lombard.
Present.
And Eamon Lombard.
Present.
Perfect. Mark Loring.
Present.
And Selena Miranda.
Present.
Aqua Bong.
Present.
And Sean O'Rourke, present. All right. Second thing on the agenda, first, I think it's the first time we ever got that right. Second thing is citizen speak. We reserve the first 15 minutes of our meetings for any citizen that wishes to speak. We ask that you just raise your hand, and when called upon, we'll unmute you, and then just please state your name and address for the record. So we'll open it up and see if we get any hands raised. And not seeing any. All right. We'll move on. If somebody does raise their hand, we'll stop. So item 3 on the agenda is approval of past meeting minutes. Last Monday, obviously, we had our last meeting on June 17th. I know they were distributed in our packets from Seamus from PMA earlier today. So just want to see if there's any questions, comments, discussion that people need. And hearing none, we'll just wait for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
All right. Is there a second? Okay. Any discussion? Being none.
Second.
Somebody did.
Yeah, Scott beat you to it, John. Sorry. So what we'll do is run back through a roll call vote. And if you weren't here last week, obviously just abstain. So John Cohane. All right. Carrie Hurley.
Yes.
Tim Lombard.
Yes.
Scott Tereshek.
Yes.
Mark Loring.
Yes.
Selena Miranda.
Abstain.
Okay. Aqua Bong.
Abstain.
Yep. And Sean O'Rourke, yes. All right. Item 4A, which is old business discussion update, architect update. And the first item is discussion of the site diagrams. So as everyone knows, we were working the past couple of weeks on layouts for what the architects have proposed for the middle school and preschool. Essentially we narrowed it down to 2, which is a singular building that houses everything under one roof, which we called option 1. And then we also had option 2, which were essentially 2 segregated buildings. So for some of you that weren't here last week, the architects basically took option 1 and option 2, dug into them a little deeper and presented some stuff. So what we want to do is kind of re-go over some of that stuff tonight. I know last week too that Dr. Burrows, you wanted to have some of the faculty and staff weigh in on the options too. So hopefully you got the chance last week to kind of work with the architects to see that. So with that, Andrew and Shanali, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Let me, so what I did is I took the content from last week's presentation and just summarized it down so that we can just briefly review the 2 options. So and I'm going to preface this with apologizing. I can't do the full presentation screen on my laptop, it doesn't work for some reason. So it's going to be a little, you're going to see all my Bluebeam stuff around it. So apologies. I'm just going to skip. Andrew, feel free to jump in anytime. So 2 weeks ago, we had presented 4 options for the site studies, and based on that presentation, option 1 and option 2 were deemed the most interesting and viable that you wanted us to pursue. So what we did is we took those site studies and started to lay them out a little bit more specifically in terms of adjacencies and entry points, and really starting to dive in to how it fits on the site. There was some feedback from that June 10th meeting that we incorporated about parking, as you can see on the right-hand side, which is option 2. There was a preference for the parking on option 1, which we then integrated into option 2. So I'll start just going back and describing the 2 options. So option 1 is the 1 building option where the preschool takes over the first and second floor of this academic wing, and it has its own separate entry here to the south. The middle school has their entry coming off of the drop-off right here to the north. And the admin area is sort of the knuckle of those 2 entry points, so they can oversee both entries as the different students are entering and exiting the building. The academic core is on this north wing, and it's also on the 3rd and 4th floors of this southern academic wing as well, where the common spaces, the cafeteria, the gym, and the library are all sort of flanked over here in this larger core. We did also revise the fire access lane, so we were able to cut that back and gain some more space over here and over here. And that's a high-level summary of the option 1. I have more drawings coming up that will show it, the full massing. And option 2 is where the preschool is separated. We pulled that, as everybody can remember, we pulled that south a little bit. Here we've indicated some sort of cross covering so that people who need to go from the preschool to the middle school will be covered and protected from the weather. But it's a similar idea of option 1, where we have a 4-story academic core over here to the north. And as you're going to see in the 3D and an exploded axon, the remaining academic core actually flanks over the common space, but the entry sequences are fairly similar to both options, and it lays out on the north side pretty similarly in both options. As we move into the massing, you can see here, I'm going to just zoom in, that the preschool is on the 1st and 2nd floor, and then there's the academic core for the 7th and 8th grade on the 3rd and 4th floors. And then over here, you can see that the preschool has been pulled apart a little bit. And then the academic core, instead of going to the south, it looks like a little bit of a boomerang. And there are like a lot of pros and cons to both options. A lot of what we heard was that people like the idea of the preschool having its own identity for the 2 building option. And then for the 1 building option, people liked the sort of the idea of this efficient academic bar over here and the adjacency to some shared admin spaces. Can go in, so you can see these exploded axons. Anybody, please feel free to interrupt. I know I'm going pretty quickly. So we put some of the exploratories on the 1st floor, 7th, the 2 7th grade teams on the 2nd, and then on the 3rd, the remaining 2 7th grade teams. And then over here on the south side, we have the 2 pre-Ks and then the 8th grade teams on the 3rd and 4th floor, with the world languages on the 4th floor here. The central core is going to have a stair and elevator, and that will go through the admin media area and having a shared common space. Carrie,
I just have a quick question about the location of the gym and auditorium.
Sure.
And I don't want to, I know that this is just very preliminary, but I'm just curious if it would be able to be set up on the Guile Street Guile Road side of any of these, to put the traffic for these types of space where it's going to be engaged more often, away from some, areas that have been areas of concern. I'm just curious if that's a thought, or if
So you're suggesting these common public spaces move to the north, or where?
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of use the school as the buffer for those types of activities. I just know from the use of Pierce right now that the gym is used a lot. And the auditorium, I think, would be engaged as well a lot. And I'm just a thought as I was looking at this over the past couple of days.
Yeah, that's great. We did have an option, and anybody please chime in and let me know if we should pivot. But we did have an option where we were showing academic space in that area where there was parking, but there seemed to be a strong preference to have parking on Guile Road for the spillover for games from the high school field, so that parking was easily accessible. It doesn't mean that we can't keep investigating to flip the academic and the parking, but we would not be able to do it before the feasibility study was delivered. We would have to focus on one of these two options, and then during schematic do a different level of review to see if we could adjust the building footprint in some way.
Hi, Carrie. This is Andrew. I just wanted to make sure I understood the question. What's the concern that there's just a lot of when there's a lot of events, there's a lot of extra traffic?
I'm trying to reduce the amount of traffic that comes behind the building towards the community that's been, concerned about having the school located where it is. So what I'm trying to say is, if we could use that parking lot on the Giles, the same parking lot that we're probably contemplating for overflow, as the primary place where people would come in from whatever.
Right.
If we could put, instead of having like the cafeteria on that side of the building, if we could put the gym and the auditorium on that side of the building.
Oh, yeah.
I see. Yeah, I mean, to be clear, I think, the feeling has been that the parking that you see that's adjacent to Guile Road is intended to be the primary kind of lot, for the events. Because the thought is that, the entry point in both cases would be that maybe Shonali, you can point to sort of that main entry point would be there, and then which would be a naturally, to be parking off of Guile Road as opposed to coming around the back. And I think there's a question of like how, there's only so many spaces, so there at some point there could be overflow where people would end up going around to the backside. But the way it's set up is that you enter where Shonali's indicating, and that would be the sort of main point to come in for after hours or weekend events.
Okay. I just know from my experience going to gyms all over Massachusetts that I like to park right near where the location is, and everybody tries to find that way in.
Right. So
you're talking about the gym or the auditorium, Carrie?
I'm talking about the gym more than the auditorium.
Okay. So
maybe the gym comes up where the cafe is, so that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's on that side of the building.
Yeah.
It's the first thing you see, and then people don't have to go any further.
Yeah, I think that.
And I don't really care if the answer is no. I just wanted to throw it out there that I spend a lot of time in gyms.
Yeah, I think that's actually the kind of feedback we're looking for the next couple of weeks, is to get the adjacencies correctly. So thank you. I think that's really important for us to hear. We've been focused on the site plan layouts to understand where the parking and the entry is. And once, we get down to the one option, then we're going to want to meet with everybody again to talk about the importance of the spaces, where they go, what kind of adjacencies they are. And I think, the suggestion of swapping the gym and the cafe makes perfect sense. And I think it's something that Andrew and I had talked about last week. And we were like, no, we got to focus on the site plans first and let's get to adjacency. So thank you.
I honestly have not paid attention to this piece until we were asked to review it again. And that's when it popped out to me. So I totally have been focused on that as well.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd throw it out there since I saw it.
No, I think it's important for us to recognize that those things are really going to be important to the way the building ultimately functions for the community. So I think then we can take that comment and then also incorporate it here as well in some way.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So
John,
go
as
ahead.
well.
Oh, go ahead.
John with his hand up.
Yep.
My question was, and you might have addressed this earlier, are these options roughly the same square footage? Classroom
Yes.
size is the same in
Yes.
each option?
Yes.
Yes, they are.
Yes.
And did we have a conversation earlier on about there were different size classrooms? One was a little more ideal than another. How did these meet that? What's the classroom size?
So these all utilize the same classroom size, we did have a conversation several meetings ago about a range of possible classroom sizes, and we landed on a classroom size of 825 square feet, and that's what both of these options are using, and that is larger than the average Pierce classroom size as it stands today. So that's sort of equivalent in both options here.
Thank you.
I can keep going and show larger plans. I don't know if this was enough of a recap for everybody, but I can just keep going. So these are the larger scale plans that you saw from the first slide, but with the spaces labeled. So you can see that we have STEM, tech, flex classroom over here, music and arts. We tried to get it as close to the auditorium so that they could have some sort of relationship, cafe, kitchen, the health and physical education spaces that support the gym. And then again, I had mentioned that shared admin space because in this version, the pre-K is embedded in the building. So again, this is the same massing. So you can see we tried to orient the academic wing, the short side towards home Inc. to minimize the impact of a large mass facing them. Whereas I'm going to skip ahead to the split building. It's again, the short end is facing home Inc., but this time it's a 2-story. So it's it'll be like around the tree line height. If I go back to the one building option, I think we've reviewed the stacking pretty clearly. Again, there's a vertical circulation in here that connects to some of the core areas, the media, the admin, and some of the shared spaces. With the 2 building option, similar layout, but I think in this option, we have the auditorium embedded in the center because it doesn't really need any windows, and then the gym off to the side. So Carrie, to your point, the gym could either have a separate entrance off of the road, or we could relocate it a little further north so that it has more connected access to the main entry. Like those are some options we can explore as we get further. What's nice in both options, the kitchen is on the exterior wall, so there'll be easy access for loading and unloading for deliveries. And again, for the auditorium as well, if they're like large scale props or anything that need to enter, you can easily access from the south side.
I'll also add that a couple things that were discussed on this option that people liked was that the ability for future expansion on the pre-K building, as we sort of dashed in one potential way that could happen, is more easily done in the 2 building approach. and it just sort of makes it a little bit more flexible for how that could play out in the future. And also there was a nice sort of potential adjacency with the cafeteria and some outside space there to the east, and also its proximity to the pre-K, that it was, when there are meals being delivered to the pre-K, that they're not traveling very far. But we were also talking about the idea of the cafe potentially spilling out into that a green space area just outside there.
Right. This could become like a outdoor classroom or an outdoor spillover space for when kids are done with their lunch, or it could be used by any of the teachers as needed. I think, Sean, you have your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Shelley. So I know at our last meeting I talked about seeing if the pre-K could be essentially rotated 90 degrees and pulled, north on the plan at all. I just wanted to find out if you guys had a chance to look at that.
Yeah, we did look at it at a high level, and I think that the short answer is that it can be done, but it raises some more questions that I think need some more study. In that it starts to impact the kind of parking and sort of arrival drop-off loop, and it also tends to place classrooms in the pre-K sort of facing the middle school potentially. And so we would want to kind of look at, not putting it so close to the middle school that those classrooms are basically looking out a window at the backside of another building. So I think the answer is that we have some flexibility there, but there's some things that we kind of need to study to know if it's if the trade-offs are worthwhile. So that's sort of where we're at. But I think that my sense from last week was that it wasn't necessarily whether that could work or not wasn't necessarily a differentiator between whether option 2 or option 1 should be the one that we proceed with. So if we do in fact continue with option 2, I think we can dig into that a little more carefully to understand the implications. As it stands now, the orientation of the pre-K building, allows for sort of a greater sense of independence from the upper middle school, and it allows for all the classrooms to sort of have unobstructed views. One side would be seeing the parking, one side would be seeing the playground. But I do think that it's possible. It's just understanding the implications.
Okay. Thanks, Andrew.
And we kind of come full circle in terms of our conversation last week. So I did follow up with staff, with leaders and others, and kind of talk through what the building committee had talked about regarding options 1 and 2. And I think in looking at everything and really kind of sussing out some of the operational differences, still lean towards option 2, the separation of the preschool. It kind of, I think for folks, it felt better. On the one hand, the design part of it felt better. Through the entry point of coming into the preschool and having a shared entrance and all the other factors involved, that it would be cleaner to have a separate building as opposed to part of the same building. So that was the outcome of that conversation.
Thanks, Peter. Does anybody else have any other questions or want to review or reflect on any of the slides? Because I'm happy to flip through.
I think, Shonali, just for a couple of the folks that weren't present last week, if you could just kind of keep walking through, and then, we'll dive in and just check with each person.
Okay, so continuing with option 2, as I said, we can definitely take a look at what Carrie's comments were about the location of the gym and the auditorium to make it more accessible from the parking lot side, so people aren't walking through the school. In this option, we were able to maintain the 143 spaces. There's 60 over here by the preschool at 83. What's nice about the parking in both, because they are similar, is that you have separate car drop-off loop that's separated from the bus drop-off, and that you were able to get 6 buses queued up for the middle school. And then we also have the separated pre-K area. And as Andrew had mentioned earlier, we've been able to squeeze out some space for the middle school behind the cafe. That's a spillover, possibly outdoor classroom. And then some space over here by the gym, so that there could possibly be some ancillary area for the gym over here that can support those activities. And then again, going to the massing, currently based on feedback that we've been hearing from the visioning and the workshops, is that the world languages prefer to be grouped together. And obviously any other feedback about those locations, we're happy to take it. But we've put all the world languages as like a separate team up on the 4th floor. So that gives an opportunity to students to intertravel between floors, which we heard was something that the teachers wanted to encourage, a little bit of that independence for the students to be able to get to classrooms in other areas outside of their teaming areas. So we've flanked it with spaces on the 4th floor and then spaces on the 1st floor. So it's controlled direction, I would call it. With the media in the center on the 2nd floor, that's over the public area, that can bleed out into the vertical circulation area that you see in the yellow here, which again is where a stair and an elevator would be located, but that can all open up and be kind of an open, engaged space. I'm not sure if much more to review. I did bring the site plan so that there was, additional context for people if they needed it. But yeah, that's kind of the summary of where we landed last week. And this week we're just continuing with the adjacencies and are hoping, after we discuss which site option, about the next steps that we can take.
Okay. So essentially, Shonali, what you guys from Arrow Street are looking for is essentially direction between option 1 and option 2 from our committee, correct?
That's correct.
That's right.
Okay. Yep. So in regards to committee members, essentially we're working on getting to a cost estimate on this, and this is, I think, one of the kind of final pieces. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 more that we're working on. So ideally, I know we were waiting we were hoping to have a vote last week, and the reason for doing this tonight is to get the input from Dr. Burrows and leaders from the district. As Dr. Burrows mentioned, option 2 was their preference. So, for others, let's do it this way: is if you do not feel comfortable making a vote, speak up now, just so we're aware. But if not, basically open it up for a motion for someone to see which option they would like to vote on, and then we can vote it up or vote it down from that. And Akra, you have your hand raised. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you very much. Broadly speaking, are both options about the same price?
At this stage where we're at, we are treating them as sort of cost neutral in terms of there were questions about whether building a separate pre-K building would add cost. And where we're at is that while there might be a little bit more roof area, for example, that goes into the pre-K, we also could build it with a different system than the main middle school building. We're thinking about potentially doing it as a wood frame structure, for example. And so there are offsets in that by separating the pre-K as its own building, we can have some more flexibility in how it's built. to offset it. So for those reasons, we at this stage feel that the two approaches are essentially equivalent.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members?
I had the same concern as Aqua. I think that's great. That's a fair response. I like, if I'm voting on these as cost neutral and I have Dr. Burrow's input, like I feel like I can make a vote on this. I remain, I guess, concerned or skeptical that they will be cost neutral, but I'm going to vote on them as if they are for the purposes of this exercise.
Yeah, the one thing, for me, and just repeat what I said last week again for the members that weren't here, having the ability to have the separate preschool there kind of gives us options that Andrew was referencing earlier, for the layouts and everything that we're doing. I think for sensitivity, that area of the site is probably our most sensitive. So having the opportunity to kind of adjust some of the stuff there and kind of not lock into a singular building that's kind of fixed with things stacked on top of it. And coupled that we may be able to come up with a way to expand it later if universal preschool becomes, a true thing, it's nationally recognized and funded through that, and we could expand it, that'd be great. But, that's, for me, that's where, my preference has always been option 2. So essentially, again, Mark.
Sorry, just to throw my 2 cents in, I agree with you, Sean. I think my preference is option 2. I feel comfortable based upon, again, any input that Dr. Burrows can share based upon the conversation he's had with his internal team, unless they have preference that is different than kind of where I'm leaning. I think the option 2 gives us the best flexibility, and especially if we're considering this as being cost neutral, I think option 2 is the best path forward based upon kind of all the things that have been shared previously. So I'm prepared to vote tonight.
All right. So it says if you're prepared to vote, Mark, I think the only thing we'd be waiting on is the motion. If you like option 2, I'd welcome that motion.
I'll make a motion to direct Aerostreet to move forward with option 2 as they've presented it here today.
I second.
Second by Selena. Any further discussion for anyone? Not hearing any, right? Perfect. We'll go to a roll call.
One quick, sorry, Sean, one quick one.
Oh, yeah, yes, sir. Don't need to be quick. Take your time.
Sorry, sharing Tim's comment too. Will we ever know the difference in cost between the two, or are we moving forward with one and only that one for the cost?
I believe it would only be one that we'd be doing a cost estimate on. So okay. That's essentially what we're trying to fine tune on. I mean, to the point that you made earlier about square footage being the same, what we're looking at here is that the cost estimate that we'll be doing is mainly based on square footage. They're not getting down into the granular level that we're going to get down into as the project progresses. But this is more of just a dollars per square foot cost that they're looking at right now. But what this does now is allows, and Shanali, correct me if I go wrong or off the rails, some of the MEP teams that are going to feed into this cost estimate are developing narratives. So they'll be able to write up, they'll be writing up separate systems for these. And Correct. Those systems will be priced, so we'll be able to see those. But
right, and then it'll be the same for structural when they write their narrative, that they'll be writing a system for the middle school and then a more compact system for the preschool. It going off of what Andrew had said earlier about having wood framing, but also being a smaller school and a smaller footprint means that we can also have a shorter floor to floor because our ductwork won't be as deep. So there's other opportunities for savings to keep it cost neutral. But those are the things narratives are going to address.
Shanali, one thing I may suggest, and I think this is kind of where John Cohen's coming from too, is like when they do that cost analysis, could they break out what the preschool cost is as compared to the other building that's there, just to get a dollars per square foot, understanding there, to see that it actually may be cheaper than if we were just to include it lumped into the overall building.
Sorry, let me just clarify.
Sure.
So you're asking if they, in the option, if we went with option 2, the preschool square footage as a separate cost from the overall campus square footage?
Correct.
I don't see why not. We can talk to the cost estimator and see how he approaches it.
Okay.
I agree with that, Sean. I think that'd be very helpful to be able to kind of see those two buildings just cut out in some way. I think it's going to be helpful for the assessment.
I would imagine from a square footage estimating perspective, they would have to break it out just to show you, it's two different building type constructions. So they're not going to be able to lump them together.
Yeah, and as I was thinking through it, Sean, that's exactly what I was thinking is, he's going to have a heavier pen on the bigger building because it's a different style of construction for that and different systems within it.
Yeah,
whereas like we've been talking about, the estimate for the preschool would be lighter, if you want to call it that, if it's a wood frame building. In Shanali, happy to jump on a call with the cost estimator when it comes up, just so I can explain a little more too.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's now, once we figure out which option tonight, I'm certainly going to be reaching out to all the consultants to confirm so that they can move forward with their narrative, talking to Peter about the best way to approach the cost estimate. So yeah, we could definitely jump on a call.
Okay. And
Sean, I wanted to, sorry, just to add one comment to that discussion. I think that to Sean Brooks' point, that they likely will have to be separating out the cost for the preschool if it's a separate building. But I just want to caution everybody that what's more difficult will be to take that information and somehow reverse engineer what the one building option would have been. It's not going to be, I think we'll be able to understand the cost of the preschool relative to the middle school and the 2 building option from the cost estimate. But the extent to which we can take that knowledge and then figure out what the preschool would have cost if it was option 1 is limited. It's not like I just want to make sure, I don't know if that's what people hope to be able to do, but I think that that's a little bit more of a complicated thing to do because, you would be pricing systems that include the preschool in the option 1, whereas in the option 2, the systems are going to be somewhat independent. So I just want to kind of caution everyone on that.
Yep.
My comment, if I may, would be just that, it's we're on a square footage basis at this point.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So, I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but it should be reasonably easy to just take square footages and based on square footage cost, figure it out roughly.
Yeah, and I think where Andrew is going with it too is on the square footage costs. For specifically when we do a separate building like this, the plumbing lead outs, the utility feeds up to that separate building would be included in kind of the overall building. But I think what you were looking to do, John, is to see that there would be some cost savings and then understand their site cost that would basically build that back up to get it to cost neutral.
Thank you.
And just checking, John, because that all precipitated from your question. And for us, just to kind of go back to it, the intent was to just get to one cost estimate for one option, and not have the ability to do both cost estimates for both of them.
And I don't want to upset that.
Okay. All right. I was just trying to figure a way that we might be able to, get to where your question was going to, but using that singular cost estimate and be able to break them apart. That's all.
Thank you.
No problem. And Carrie, you have your hand up.
I was just curious, and you could have already answered this, and I apologize if you have, but how are we pricing this? As net zero, as lead, gold, silver? Just curious.
That's going to be one of our I think our next questions that we're going to have to get to an understanding on.
Okay, all right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, no, there were options for it.
I just, as we're talking about cost per square foot, that's going to be drastically different. And I know that there's just a lot of things coming out that it's kind of forcing folks to go net zero. So I just was curious.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think
good.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Well, I was going to say, Carrie, well, I think it was maybe 2 meetings ago, we had our director of sustainability present sustainable options, for the project. And one of the decisions that we're going to be looking to this group to make is, which there were 4 potential types of systems that we talked about, and we wanted to kind of get feedback about which one the group wants to proceed with. And that's going to be an important choice that will impact cost. And similarly, whether we're looking to simply meet the current energy code that the town of Milton has elected to, abide by, or sort of do something beyond that. And so absolutely those choices will, have an impact on cost. And I think once we've made the decision about option 1 versus 2, that's sort of the next topic. I don't know that that's on the agenda this evening, Sean, but it is something that we're going to be looking, for feedback on shortly.
Yep.
Let me take my hand down. Sorry.
No problem. So just see if there are any other questions or comments. And honestly, very good discussions. So I appreciate them all. And if none, I think Mr. Loring was about to start a motion.
Didn't I already make a motion?
Yeah.
Okay. You did. So
I think we made it and seconded. I think we were in discussion.
Yep, you're right. Apologies about that. I got too deep into the discussion. All right. So seeing no further discussion, we'll go to a roll call vote. So this is the recommendation of option 2. So we'll start with Mr. Cohen.
Yes.
All right. Carrie Hurley.
Yes.
Scott Tarashek.
Yes.
Aqua Bond.
Yes.
Selena Miranda.
Yes.
Tim Lombard.
Yes.
Mark Loring.
Yes.
And Sean O'Rourke. Yes. Unanimous. All right. Next thing on our agenda is essentially just Seamus put a topic of just new business. So essentially it seemed pretty open-ended. So I sent around, so the town was notified last week from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs that they did their review on the proposed legislation or the land swap for ecological value. They came back with a positive recommendation, so that came through last Friday. So I sent that around for everybody, so I hope everybody got a copy of that. So we know from the time that Senator Tim Maltese, Chief of Staff, came to our meeting that that was one of the things that they were waiting on. So the bill is in a committee for scheduled for a 3rd reading. That committee, from what I've seen today, has reported it out of that committee as of today. So our hope is it will be read for a 3rd time and voted on through the Senate, and then migrate its way through the House. I've already got in contact with Senator Representative Fluker Oakley, who's a co-sponsor on the bill, and she's going to do her best to usher it through to try to get us to that deadline before the end of the session. So the practice would be that the bill would come out of the Senate into the House. It would be read 3 times, then engrossed, and then engrossed, I think, in both the Senate and the House, and then basically would go to the governor for signature, and then it'd be finalized. So just with that, I'll open up, see if anybody has any questions or comments, just in regards to that update. Yeah, Aqua.
Thanks, Sean, and thank you for the positive update you've given. Given the state where we are now, what can we do to help it move forward? And more specifically, what can we do, or what information do we need to share with our constituents? Many of my constituents are willing to help wherever necessary. What do I tell them?
Yeah, for me, it would be, contact your legislatures. I'm hoping it gets voted on soon, but, right now we're, still in Senator Timothy's hands, and, based on his chief of staff and, comments they've received, he's pushing this as best he can. The next part is once it gets to the House, contacting our House representatives, which is Representative Brandy Fluker Oakley and Representative Bill Driscoll. So those would be the two, as far as the land swap, to kind of push that over the goal line.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Any other? Oh, Mr. Cohen, sorry about that.
Do we, just playing devil's advocate, do we know what the schedule would be if they don't approve it by July?
So there's a couple things. So as Aaron Bradley mentioned at
I can't hear you.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
There you are. I didn't hear any of that. Sorry.
No. Sorry about that. For some reason, I hit mute on my computer. I'm using my phone for audio. I thought I hit mute on that, so apologies.
You said Aaron Bradley.
So if it did not happen on the by the 31st, is Aaron Bradley referenced at one select board meeting, there's still the opportunity to do it by the end of the year. While it's not commonplace, it's still an opportunity to do that. If it did not happen by the end of the year, then they essentially would have to refile it with whoever would be our new senator at that time. But for us, the from everything we've heard, it's essentially was waiting for EEA to weigh in. So that's why getting that positive recommendation last week was, for us, a big check mark to go. I know Senator Timothy provided a 15-step process at his meeting when he was here, and that we're on step 11. So I think once we get done with this, we'll be on step 12. So hopefully making a move as quickly as we can. Any other questions? So I think we'll move on to agenda item number 6, which is future meeting dates. So for our next school building committee meeting, I'll look to, Chinali, Andrew, that question that comes up on essentially the HVAC system that Kate presented and stuff like that. Essentially, when are you looking for input for that?
So thank you. I was just looking at the schedule. So we are looking to get the site plan that we just saw today and the narratives to Peter Bradley by July 12th because he needs 2 weeks to do a cost estimate. So that leaves us either July 1st or July 8th to meet next. And if we met July 8th, I don't think that would give GGD enough time to incorporate it into their narratives. So I'm hoping that the week of July 1st that we could meet to discuss further, what the options are. And I'm not sure exactly what kind of information we can talk offline about how we can help you get to the right answer. I'm happy to invite Kate back or somebody from GGD to talk through the different systems. I think it's a two-part conversation. One is what's the right system for the school of the 4 options, and then also cost. And they are obviously linked in a myriad of ways. So the goal is for Andrew and myself and the team at Arrow Street is to we've been trying to talk to GGD about these options, and they're doing research and get back to us, but we need to sort of nail down some sort of like comparative analysis between the 4 systems and present it to you on Monday. But I don't know if you need more further technical details on the way the systems operate, so I can invite the right people to be in the room. So I think those are the 2 things that we need to review. And then I think I believe it was Carrie who was asking about some of the sustainability metrics that goes hand in hand with the selection of the systems. So I think that needs to be part of the conversation as well.
Yeah, I think, from my end, Shanali, it's like, having the cost up front on these, and specifically the upfront costs, because I know with, as Kate mentioned, for geothermal heat pump, there's a lot of rebates and stuff that kind of offset the upfront, capital expenditure. However, that basically adds into a bottom line that we have to make a larger ask at the beginning, even though we'll recoup that money later on through tax incentives.
Yeah.
So having those kind of upfront raw numbers of what they'll be that will add into that overall bottom line would be important to know.
Yeah.
So basically costs in one column, potential rebates in the next column, and then the net cost in the third.
So I just want to caution everybody on costs, because it's not going to be the cost for this building, right? It's going to be comparative costs, meaning this system is going to be 10 to 15% more than this other system. Until Peter gets his hands on what system we selected, we're not going to have actual numbers. So I just want to caution everybody, like whatever numbers we talk about on Monday, it's not going to be the actual numbers for this building. It's just going to be comparative, if that makes sense.
You're talking about the other Peter, right?
Peter Bradley, sorry. Peter Bradley, our cost estimator. I know you're good at what you do, but I don't know.
A few times I was like, wait, what do I need to do?
Peter B.
Another thing. Yeah.
I should start saying PMC. Apologies.
Yeah, another thing we'll add to your list, Peter.
And ironically, he has the same initials, so I can't say PB either. So
it's okay.
Yeah, Aqua.
For the rebates, knowing that we're a town, and would we be qualified for the said rebates? Are those just for private investors? If they're tax benefits, does the town of Milton pay taxes? How do we get that back?
I don't know, but I think we'll have to take that up at our next meeting. We can look into that, but I think that's kind of the type of things for questions like Shanali was asking for. What do we need to make that decision? If that's one of them. But I'm pretty sure any of the tax rebates that Kate is referencing have come from other schools that are public entities. So I don't think she's doing it for private.
no, these were all for schools. So the rebates, I'm going to get Kate to explain it again more clearly on Monday, but the rebates are applicable to a public school because we've used them before on other schools.
Thank you.
So for our next meeting, does next Monday work for everybody? Same time, we'll keep it as a Zoom meeting. I'll be down at Cape. So, but if that works for everybody, let me know. Or if it doesn't work, let me know. All right, 3 thumbs up. Those are all good. All right, so let's plan on that. We'll, as I mentioned, probably a couple months ago, these meetings are getting dense, as we're getting to, these decisions. So I appreciate everybody jumping on. We have a full house tonight. Glenn Hoffman jumped on after his a baseball game, I think, for his son. So good with all hands on deck. So yeah. So Seamus, if you could work with Lynn and just get the same link credentials and stuff like that for next Monday.
Yep, will do. So it'll be a Zoom link similar to this one. Awesome.
Yep. All right. All right. Last item on the agenda, item 7 is adjournment. So entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Third by Tim.
Right. Tim, you can have it.
Third.
Thank you.
All right, there we go. So roll call vote. Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Carrie Hurley?
Yes.
Mr. Tereshak?
Yes.
Mr. Abong?
Yes.
Mr. Laurie?
Yes.
Dr. Miranda?
Yes.
Mr. Lombard?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
And myself, yes. All right. Thank you very much, and see you next week. And enjoy Game 7 tonight for all you watching it.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sean.